was wondering.
Of the what?
Okay, I
Of the
was
Tea
there.
Party. Okay.
Okay, the Boston Tea in the commission by the federal government for the 250th anniversary of the American Revolution is the Semi-Quincentennial Commission. I was wondering if you, being a big shot congressman, could have it changed to the Quarter Millennium Commission, which is a lot easier to understand. I know it's not that important, but it'll make life a lot less annoying in the future.
That'll be about 900th on my list of priorities, but we'll see.
Yeah,
about it.
I figure somewhere, yeah. But I figure, couldn't hurt to ask.
Oh,
It's Thursday, we're so close.
By the way, you made a great speech at the convention this morning.
oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Glad somebody was.
No, and Jerry, Fran Hazelker, and I was there. Well done. I was there until the almost bitter end. It was a long day.
Yep.
Chuck Schumer made the point with wearing his mask that says cancel student debt. You think going to happen?
I don't know. I'd like to do that. It's not going to happen in this session of Congress. So.
On the eve of war, or is it? U.S. officials say a Russian invasion of Ukraine could come at any time.
You're on mute, Joe. You're on mute.
Wow, Luana, you really saved the day there.
There
Hi,
you go.
everyone. So successfully muted everyone, including myself. What would it be without a mute technical issue on a Zoom call, especially to kick us off? But thank you so much to everybody for joining us. Looking forward to a successful evening. I do want to do some opening remarks before I turn it over to a couple of our candidates, especially those who I know are on a time crunch. So first and foremost, let me just kind of walk you through the way tonight's going to work. So my name is Joe Remsen. I'm the president of CRDC. I'd like to thank Luana Green, our exec VP, along with Fran Hasselkorn, our Democratic State Committeewoman, Charles Bear, and Sylvia DiPietro, our district leaders, for helping organize a lot of our speakers for tonight. We have 13 races we're going to be endorsing candidates for. To be eligible to vote, you must be a CRDC member in good standing who signed up prior to January 2nd, 2022, and you must not be voting with any other club. Now, I've uploaded the emails of all the eligible members to our voting platform, OpaVote, and you should have all received an email at 6 p.m. with instructions on how to vote. And the vote's going to be open for the entire meeting. It will also remain open for an extra hour up until 10 p.m. if you'd like to do your own research, or if there's any issues, obviously we'll be working through it. So first, let me explain how OpaVote works. Like I said, you should have received an email. The subject is CRDC endorsement meeting. Check your spam if you don't see it in your regular email. This is the same system that we used last year, so hopefully there'll be no issues. When you click on the link in the email, it's going to allow you to vote for the 13 offices. It's pretty simple. Since majority rules for statewide offices, all of the voters are a simple single vote, no ranked choice, so hopefully no issues. Now, please note, for many of the offices, there is only one candidate listed. This is because there's only been one candidate who has reached out to obtain CRDC's endorsement. And for the offices that have multiple candidates, it's because those are the people that we've heard from who have requested our endorsement, some of whom will be speaking tonight. There's always the option also for no endorsement. So the order of the candidates is randomized and shuffled for everyone. So just keep that in mind. And our nominees for the 13 offices: for governor, we have Tom Suozzi, our incumbent Kathy Hochul, and Jumaane Williams. For lieutenant governor, we have Brian Benjamin. For attorney general, we have Letitia James. For New York State comptroller, we have Thomas DiNapoli. For U.S. Senate, we have Chuck Schumer. For the House of Representatives for the 12th District, we have both Carolyn Maloney and Rana Abdelhamid. For U.S. House of Representatives for the 10th District, we have Gerald Nadler. For the State Senate for the 27th District, we have Brad Hoylman. And for the New York State Assembly for the 75th District, we have 6 nominees: Harrison Marks, Tony Simone, Layla Law-Gasecco, Amber Nicosia, Chris LeBron, and Lowell Kern. And then we do have our state committee. For male, we have Louis Sheldon Brown. For female, we have Francine Hasselkorn. And then for civil court, we have Lisa Sokoloff for the 3rd District, and surrogate court, we have Hillary Gingold for the surrogate court as well. Now, before I move on, I do want to say I know that there was a nomination that was made that we didn't have a chance to get into the open vote system. So I did want to see, is there any nominations for, I believe it was for state committee that we'd like to get on the floor now? So I'll pause there for a moment.
What do you mean by state committee?
One of our general members reached out and requested to make a nomination for state committee.
And who is that?
I would like to make, it's Evelyn speaking. I would like to make a nomination for Kathy Nazario for state committee woman.
Thank you, Evelyn. So because of that nomination, and apologies that this is the world we live in with technology, we are going to run a separate ballot, just like we did for mayor last year, for state committee woman, for state committee female. So it's you can vote however you like for the ballot that you've received. Tomorrow, we will send a separate ballot to every eligible voter for state committee woman. So that's how we're going to handle that. So last but not least, I know there may be some technical issues. If you need assistance, you can contact our exec VP, Luana Green, who's the person who let me know that I was on mute, who will be able to set you up. So Luana will put her phone number and maybe her email in the chat. If you have any technical issues, please reach out to her. We will make sure everyone's able to vote. So, don't worry. We'll work through it if there's any issues. And we're going to be joined tonight by many of the candidates seeking office. Each candidate will be given up to 5 minutes to address the club. And we will allow for 1 to 2 questions per candidate, where we've asked that we keep those questions very brief to respect everyone's time, and we'll allow 2 minutes for the answer. Because we already dedicated 2 hours to the assembly forum, we are going to limit the assembly candidates to just 1 minute each, just to keep it a little more brief and keep us going, along with those questions. So if you have a question to ask, just to make it easier, please send a message in the chat. Mute everyone, so there's a little echo. All right, if you have a question, please post it in the chat, just because that'll be the easiest way to keep track of who's got a question. And the club will endorse whoever receives the most votes tonight. So I know there were a few people who had a time crunch. So our first speaker, if he is on, is going to be Senator Chuck Schumer, who I know had a bit of a time crunch. So I believe, is Senator Schumer with us yet? If he is not on, I know Congressman Nadler, you also had a little bit of a time restraint, and I can see it here on my screen. So I'll give the floor to you, sir, for 2 to 5 minutes, and then we'll field 1 to 2 questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I want to thank CRDC for all they do to make sure we have a strong and active Democratic Party. I would not be able to do what I do in Congress without the club's support. We've had an incredibly busy couple of years, and I'm proud of my progressive record in Congress. From impeaching Donald Trump twice, to passing the Zadroga 9/11 Health and Compensation Act, to rolling back civil rights abuses in the Patriot Act, to fighting for artists to be paid in the Music Modernization Act, to fighting to increase funding for infrastructure and mass transit, to supporting the Green New Deal and fighting climate change, which we all know is an existential threat to the human race. This past year, I have been working diligently to address issues that matter most to New Yorkers. While it's been a tough year, I'm proud to have passed legislation that has helped working families and address social inequities brought on by COVID-19. We passed legislation that boosted funding for rental assistance and ensured that those most affected by the pandemic could make ends meet. Most importantly, we helped ensure that every single American could access the life-saving vaccine. We also passed the bipartisan infrastructure bill that will revitalize our nation's critical infrastructure, bringing $20 billion to New York to fund crucial projects ranging from the Gateway Tunnel project to the Cross Harbor Rail Freight Tunnel and Second Avenue Subway expansion, to the newly announced Interborough Express. I also strongly supported the Build Back Better Act, which is the single largest investment in working families in American history. As passed the House, this bill would stop insulin price gouging, capping costs at $35. It also expands paid family and medical leave, funds universal pre-K, and extends the child subsidies so many families rely on. Plus, it would enact major parts of the Green New Deal to tackle climate change and make the key investments we need in clean, renewable energy. My work in Congress on the expansion of civil rights and recognition for the LGBTQ community has been by far some of the most meaningful and important work I've done in Congress. I'm incredibly proud of how far we have come. Each of these bills represents important changes to the law to bend the arc of justice to make this a fairer, more equal, and ultimately better country. As chair of the House Judiciary Committee, I've also been proud to use every tool at my disposal to defend a woman's right to access safe reproductive care. For decades, I have fought to make sure women maintain their constitutionally guaranteed right to have an abortion. Our committee has jurisdiction over many of the most pressing and vital issues facing our country today, from civil rights to immigration to gun control. Just to note a few of the major pieces of legislation that I brought to the floor and was instrumental in passing the House: the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, which would strengthen the Voting Rights Act and restore key protections for minority voters that were gutted by the Supreme Court. The American Dream and Promise Act, which would provide legal protections and a path to citizenship for dreamers who were brought to this country as children and know only the U.S. as their home. The Equality Act, which would provide comprehensive civil rights protections to LGBTQ Americans. The George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, which would reform policing in a variety of ways. Legislation to require universal gun background checks. The No Ban Act, to ensure that no president could enact another Muslim ban, such as President Trump imposed. Legislation to remove the deadline for finally ratifying the Equal Rights Amendment, and reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act. Unfortunately, each of these bills remains stuck in the Senate, where a minority of senators can use the filibuster to block consideration, even if they would command the majority support. One bright spot was legislation that became law to ensure accurate data collection regarding hate crimes and to expedite Justice Department review of hate crimes related to COVID-19, most of which have targeted Asian Americans. I was also successful in enacting legislation I introduced to shore up the Crime Victims Fund, which provides funding for a range of services to crime victims, including survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, child abuse, and trafficking. Other legislation that we passed in the Judiciary Committee that I hope will reach the House floor soon includes my Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act, or the MORE Act, which would decriminalize marijuana at the federal level, expunge prior convictions, and provide services to those who are most affected by the war on drugs. A range of bills to address the antitrust concerns presented by the big tech companies. The Shop Safe Act, which would crack down on counterfeit products sold online, and several bills to address anti-competitive behavior by drug companies that enable them to charge consumers artificially high prices for prescription drugs. On a more local level, I'm proud to say that I've worked on many issues that are important to Chelsea, especially Penn Station, working to ensure that while we rehabilitate Penn Station and look toward the future, that the needs of the local residents and community are taken into account, not just the needs of the commuters who don't live on the west side or of the developers. I've been very much a supporter of congestion pricing. I've also advocated that Manhattan residents have a seat on the Transportation and Mobility Board. And I'm also fighting against the scourge of helicopters that is a major nuisance for all of us. I have legislation that would ban them in New York City. I hope we'll see movement on this legislation in this Congress. I want to say thank you for the club's longstanding friendship and for your ongoing activism. And I humbly ask for your support and endorsement. And obviously, I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Congressman Nadler, right at 4 minutes and 50 seconds there. I do see a question here. I'll go ahead and read it since it's just posted right here. From John Mudd regarding affordable housing. So where is affordable housing that's true affordable housing? We've been in a health and homelessness crisis since before COVID. and the ESD in Vornado, that represents bad policies that we're dealing with locally. So curious where you are on the river-to-river construction of commercial building and how we're going to build enough housing
Where am I on
to
what?
end homelessness.
What was that last?
Where are you on the river-to-river construction of commercial building, and how are we going to build enough housing to end homelessness?
Well, I'm against river-to-river construction of commercial buildings. Obviously, we have to have affordable housing. In the Build Back Better Act, we've got a lot of money for affordable housing. One thing I think is particularly important, and it's very controversial, and that is that we change zoning. This is not a congressional thing, but I'll use my influence on it to the extent I have local influence. We have to change zoning to permit the building of low income and multifamily housing in areas that are now zoned for single family homes or just small dwellings, especially at transit stops, especially in the suburbs. Not especially, but including in the suburbs where you get tremendous opposition, obviously. But without doing that, we're never going to solve the homelessness or affordable housing problem.
Thank you, Congressman. I appreciate you answering the question. And I guess this is regarding the Penn Station project, Empire Station project. What are your feelings regarding the tenants that are being evicted for the Penn Station project, the Empire Station project?
Well, we don't like to see evictions, obviously, but insofar as it is necessary to expand Penn Station, there are going to have to be some evictions. And the question is, there are going to have to be some evictions on this block south of the block 580, the block south of Penn Station, because you have to construct new tracks and other facilities there. But you want to keep it to a minimum, obviously.
Well, wonderful. So thank you, Congressman Nadler. I appreciate you answering our questions and joining us. I know that, again,
thank
as I
you.
mentioned earlier, thank you, sir. That Senator Schumer was hoping to join us. It's hard to keep an eye on everyone who's on here, so I don't know, Senator Schumer, if you're on. If he's not, I will turn it over to, I believe, the third person who had told us they had a little bit of time constraint, which was Congresswoman Maloney. So Congresswoman Maloney, thank you for joining us. We'll turn it over to you.
Chuck Schumer. Hi.
Oh, hi, Senator Schumer. Sorry, we couldn't hear you.
Shield for now. I'm sorry. I had to close the Senate floor. But if we could do it now, I'd appreciate it.
Please join. Go ahead.
Is that all right?
As long as Congresswoman Maloney is patient, which I think hopefully she will be.
Carolyn?
I appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, I was supposed to be on at 7, but I had to close the Senate floor. But we did file for Monday when we come back a bill you and Jerry really care about, as does Dick Gottfried, which is the Women's Freedom Protection Act, the bill that codifies Roe v. Wade. And
okay.
Yeah, so that's what took me a little while. So I apologize, but it was a good effort. So what, I'm supposed to speak for about 10 minutes and then leave a few minutes for questions? Is that what I've been told?
We were thinking 5, but 10 is welcome.
Okay, thank you, everybody. First, I want to thank President Joe Remsen, and Vice President Laura Green, District Leader Sylvia DiPietro, Charles Bayer. Thank you all for the great work that you do. And a special shout out to someone who came to the Assembly 2 years before I did, Dick Gottfried, and is retiring. But he has been just such a great leader on healthcare, on choice, on LGBTQ rights, and so many other issues. I don't know if he's on the Zoom, but he deserves a huge shout out from all of us. So thank you, Dick, for the good work you do. And I just want to say hello, if he's on, to Eric Botcher. I've worked closely over the years with Brad and Liz, your senators, and I look forward to a great relationship with Councilman Botcher. He and I sat down, had a great lunch, and we'll be working together on issues that affect your community and our country. And finally, I want to thank everyone here who's members of this great club, Chelsea Democratic Club. The bottom line is that your jobs, you all have jobs, you all have families, you have a lot of other obligations, but here on a Thursday evening, over 93 participants are on the Zoom. So I thank you very, very much for the good work that you have done, your democracy in action in a very basic way. And it's why I went into politics in the first place. I saw problems where I grew up in Sheepshead Bay. Tenants didn't get heat. They paid their money and got no heat and were freezing in the winter. Senior citizens in those days had to often eat dog food. They just didn't have enough money to support themselves, given how little that they were given in terms of Social Security and Medicare in those days. The subways and the buses would break down. People would go to work and they'd be docked pay for a day, screamed at by their employer through no fault of their own. There were so many different problems. I said, I have to try to solve these problems for the people I grew up with. So I've always been sort of a grassroots politician, and I have stayed that way ever since. As I've risen through the ranks, the problems have gotten bigger, especially in the last few years, but my passion and commitment to deliver solutions and making the lives of everyday people better stays the same. When Democrats secured the Senate majority a year ago, after 4 horrific years of Senate Republicans marching in lockstep with the worst president we have ever had, a horrible human being, we promised the American people we'd pursue the biggest and boldest change possible, even with our razor-thin majority. I'll go through these quickly since I don't want to take up too much of your time, but we passed the $1.9 billion American Rescue Plan. Jerry and Carol played a great role in the House in getting that done. It was a bill so significant that Bernie Sanders called it the most progressive piece of legislation for working people in the modern history of the United States. It wasn't easy, but every single Democrat, from moderate to progressive, came together to support it, and it did so much. You know, it put money in people's pockets. It saved the MTA, restaurants, entertainment values, Broadway, pension funds, vaccinations to communities that never got it, funeral assistance, a law I wrote because people would have no money. Their loved ones would die under COVID and they didn't have money to bury them. How horrible. So we provided money for that, as well as help for our public schools, our teachers, our child care supporters. Then a little later, we passed the $1.2 trillion Infrastructure and Investment Jobs Act. What does that mean? Jobs, jobs, jobs. And there are provisions in the bill for local hire, for only hiring union folks, and for making sure that people of color, poor people, people at part-time jobs, people who've gotten out of prison, get special preference with wealth of new construction jobs. And it's going to help mass transit in our city. Subway deserts like the East Bronx and East Harlem, 2nd Avenue subway, and the new negotiations I had using the MTA money to get a new line in the East Bronx will happen. It's going to remediate lead pipes in disadvantaged communities, which hurt our kids so badly. Zero emission school buses, low carbon ferries, electric vehicle charging stations, cleaning up brownfields and superfunds. And one other thing I'd mention to you in our list of accomplishments, judges. It's been my passion to make sure that we put the right people on the bench. As you know, the Trump people put the most awful people on the bench, and we have to redress that balance. And so what I have done under my leadership, the Senate has put more women. A majority of the new judges are women. A majority of the new judges are people of color. And there is not only demographic diversity, but also professional diversity. It's not just fancy lawyers from big Park Avenue law firms. We put on people who are public defenders like Eunice Lee, first African-American, not first, but only African-American on the Second Circuit. Myrna Perez, daughter of Mexican immigrants, one of the biggest voting rights experts, also on the Second Circuit. First Latina confirmed since Sonia Sotomayor. And I take a little pride in Sonia Sotomayor. I suggested her name to Barack Obama when there was a Supreme Court vacancy. I just sat at the Judiciary Committee next to Nina Morinson. She's the head of the Innocence Project, who is nominated to be district judge for Eastern. She brings fairness to people. We have put more judges on the bench than any first-term presidents here since JFK, and that's going to make a huge difference because you know these judges have power. So we've done a lot. Not easy to get things done, but we have a whole lot to do. And here are some of my priorities should I win another term in the Senate. First, more resources to fighting the existential threat of climate change before it's too late. A great focus on both the economic and racial inequality that's been the poison of our society for decades. Reversing the Trump tax cuts and making sure the wealthy pay their final share, closing loopholes, raising rates, fixing our broken immigration system and working to get a path to citizenship for all 11 million, canceling college debt for college students. It's such a burden for them. Not college students, college graduates, graduate school graduates, and a lot of the burden falls on Black and brown people. Reverse the damage done by the war on drugs by legalizing marijuana at the federal level and reinvesting the profits in communities of color. And of course, we have to find a way to expand the ballot box. We're going to continue to pursue voting rights. We got 48 Dems to vote to change the rules. We are right now working at it, trying to get some good things done on voting rights, on getting rid of dark money. We had a meeting with the White House about that yesterday, and on redistricting. So we got a lot to do. It's never easy to get things done in the 50-50 Senate. I tell people this is the hardest job I've ever had, with a huge burden, with only 50 senators and intransigent right-wing Republicans. But it may be the hardest job I've ever had, but I have more energy and more enthusiasm for it than ever before because it's so damn important. So with that, I'll be happy to take a couple of questions. Who's running the show?
Hi, sir. Well, I'll get us started here. So thank you so much for joining us. We did ask this question actually before the 7 o'clock whistle started of Congressman Nadler, but I'd like to get your take on it before I turn it over to one of the general members. There's concern, obviously, about voter turnout, especially from young people, in the upcoming year. And you mentioned yourself, obviously, the importance of student debt and the ability to maybe even cancel student debt entirely. Where are we with that legislation? Do you think that's something that we can accomplish soon?
Yes.
It definitely seems like it would energize young people a lot.
Here's the good news. The good news is that you don't need the Congress with our 50 votes in the Senate. You need 60 here to pass it. All you need is President Biden with the flick of a pen to do it. He's done it for small little things, like when he delays the payments during COVID. He has the same authority to cancel debt. We have Elizabeth Warren, myself, and Ayanna Pressley in the House have a massive campaign to get this done. We have now proven, at first the Biden people said that, oh, they're legally not allowed. We've proven to them that it is. And we think we have a really good chance to get him to do this. I would urge every member of Chelsea Democrats to email, to call, to write, however you communicate with your elected officials, just to the White House and tell them you want student debt canceled or at least up to $50,000. One other point, it's an issue of racial justice. The burden falls more heavily on Black and brown students and former students, mainly because maybe they're first time in college and they get taken advantage of by these awful, pernicious, preying for-profit colleges. 28% of the wealth gap between Black and white is caused by student debt alone. So this is very doable, and I urge everybody to go all out. It's a passion of mine.
Wonderful. Thank you, Senator. And we have one other question from a general member. It's typed in the chat, so I'll do my best to annotate for you. From John Mudd, real estate's hold on the city is intense, and the favoritism to developers over the public is clear. For us to have a peaceful and successful society, we need to prioritize providing homes for the homeless. Are you going to oppose the Penn Station expansion in its current form? And how are you going to create enough housing to ease homelessness, housing, and the health crisis? And where do you stand on the 421A tax credit?
Okay, on the Penn Station, I generally follow what a community wants. I haven't studied the details of it. I'd be happy to sit down with the group and talk to you about it. In terms of housing, in the BBB bill, there was $300 billion for housing because of me. I insisted it be on it. 40 billion for NYCHA to upgrade NYCHA, but much of the rest to build affordable housing across the country. Plus $10 billion for homeless assistance to build housing for the homeless, money for first-time home buyers. A lot of people, a lot of young people, particularly again, poor people and people of color, they have enough to pay the mortgage, but not enough for a down payment. So this would provide the down payment. It was the most extensive housing plan ever put together by the federal government. And so that is our goal if we get BBB done, to get that done.
Wonderful. Thank you, Senator Schumer. We appreciate
And
you joining
by
us
the way,
tonight
I
and
started
making time
out
for us.
when I was assemblyman as a tenant organizer and helped develop the way where tenants, with the help of the Legal Aid Society, they should get the credit, where tenants could put money in escrow until and pay for heat themselves when the landlord wasn't giving heat. So I've been a tenant person my whole life.
Good to
That
get
was
your true
before,
roots.
that was before some of you were born.
Not me.
All right. Well, thank you
Okay,
so
so
much.
just, I hope I
Senator.
earn your endorsement, and I promise you I'll work every bit as hard for the progressive ideals we believe in the next 6 years as I have in the past.
Wonderful. Well, thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
I will turn it over next to Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney. So thank you for waiting so patiently.
Thank you, Carolyn, for letting me go ahead. Appreciate it.
Thank you for passing the Joe Lentil Post Office this week and for working so hard on postal reform and getting that bill ready to pass, which I think is extremely, extremely important. First of all, I want to thank CRDC for having me here and your leadership for inviting me. I am very grateful to Mindy Rosier and Joe Remsen, the president, and Laura Green, the vice president, Sylvia DiPietro, and Charles Bayer that was on a meeting earlier on the community things, Francine Hasselkorn, our state committee, and Louis Children Brown. Thank you for the leadership that you have and for what you do for our communities and being a strong voice for democratic values. It's been a busy day, actually. I had the honor of not only attending the state conference where we nominated our slate of Democratic officers running in this critically important election, but I was given the honor of being one of the nominators for Governor Kathy Hochul, whom I served with in Congress and also when she was Lieutenant Governor, worked together to bring monies to our great city. This was a busy week in that a bill that I had authored and worked on for about a year called the Postal Reform Bill passed, and it passed with 120 Republicans, which means it's got a good shot at getting through the Senate, which Senator Schumer is working on. The post office was slated to run out of money by 2025. The Republicans have always wanted to privatize it. This bill, I called it the agreement bill because I worked hard to get Republican support from the professionals at the post office and the unions would put it on a firm footing going forward. It really saved taxpayers money. It reorganized and moved out two requirements that cost the Postal Service over $50 billion in 10 years. I can go into great detail on what they are if anybody's interested. But it also allows them to sell non-postal services to help them get on a better footing, preserves a 6-day voting or 6-day delivery, and creates a portal, an online portal where you, the consumer, can check on what the delivery is by really zip codes to track your postal service. The post office is one of these institutions that knits us together, and it's in the Constitution. So I'm proud of having authored that bill. I introduced 5 new bills on gun safety. My personal favorite is it makes selling illegal guns a felony. It's not even a felony now. So law enforcement tells me that if you're marketing illegal guns, they don't even bother to arrest you because it's just a slap on the wrist. So I think if we're serious about gun safety, we should start cracking down on the selling of illegal guns. Due to redistricting, I have been drawn into the CRDC area far more. So some of the members may not know me, so I just want to give you a little framework of who I am. I am a mother, a former educator, and your congresswoman. My husband and I, Cliff Maloney, who has passed away, raised 2 daughters here in our district. My first job was teaching English in East Harlem. When funding for the program was cut, I went to Albany to get it back. And that experience changed my life. I could see the power of government to do bold, progressive things to help people. So I went to work in Albany. I worked for 2 speakers and the Democratic leader of the state Senate. Even though I worked for the Housing Committee and worked closely, I see Mike McKee, a tenants leader. We worked together. I don't know if you remember it back then when I worked as a staffer for the Assembly for Eddie Lehner, who was then chairman of the Housing Committee. When I was pregnant, there was no family leave, so I was told to just leave, but I had to stay and fought to keep my job. It made me very dedicated to work-family balance and helping work-family balance for families. In Congress, I passed paid leave for all federal employees, which is under the jurisdiction of my Oversight Committee. And I'm now fighting even harder to get it for every American, so families would not have to experience the horror that I did about fighting to keep my job because I was becoming a mother. In Congress, I passed, when I went to the City Council, I authored the first equality bill in New York State history, a bill that was deemed so controversial that council leadership refused to even print the bill. But I had to fight them to print it. I said it wasn't unconstitutional until I went to the Supreme Court. I fought and I won, and now same-sex marriage is the law of the land. I authored and passed the first campaign finance reform in New York State history. At the time, it was called the toughest and best in the nation. And when I went to Congress, I passed campaign finance reform, limiting contributions and expenditures. Then came Citizens United, which has brought more dark money and less transparency into campaigns than ever before. And now I'm working to get that terrible decision overturned, that terrible Supreme Court decision. Change doesn't come easy, but it will come if you never quit. I didn't quit on our 9/11 responders and survivors, and now they have health care for life, having authored the James Zadroga Health and Compensation Bill. And I didn't quit during COVID-19. I was right here in New York City and helped deliver billions of dollars for our city to fund vaccines, for hospitals and healthcare workers, for rent relief, and to keep the doors of our small businesses open. I fought for family leave and won, for the Second Avenue subway and won. I took on big banks and won, and I'm still fighting. I brought to my district alone over $100 billion in federal funding for infrastructure projects. And the Second Avenue subway was the only subway built, not in New York City, not New York State, but in the entire country since I've been in office. And I joined the community in supporting NYCHA. We were successful in adding $40 billion in the Build Back Better bill for New York City's public housing, which is desperately needed. I am committed to having a healthcare center at every housing development. I have brought one to the Queensbridge houses. We are opening up, I believe, another one on March 8th at Astoria houses. Also, we brought over 500, in the Build Back Better bill, it was over 555 billion for affordable housing. That bill has been stalled. We're going to be working very hard to get it through Congress, through the Senate at this point. But our work is not done yet. As the first woman to chair the House Oversight Committee, I'm fighting for a Green New Deal to hold big oil accountable, for affordable housing, for healthcare for all, for voting rights, for criminal justice reform, for the Equal Rights Amendment, for a city and government that works for all of us, not just some of us. I have a record of accomplishment that you can trust that I will continue to deliver for our district. For example, after passing the Credit Card Bill of Rights, I am working now to pass an overdraft bill to crack down on unfair, deceptive banking fees, keeping monies and fees in your pockets, not banks. Independent reviews have said my Credit Card Bill of Rights saves you, the consumer, over 16 billion a year, keeping that money in your pockets, not in fees for the banks. It's been, I call it the Maloney stimulus package because it's bringing money, keeping money in our community. After passing the 9/11 Health and Compensation Bill, I'm now working on a $3 billion in additional funding to make sure the money is always there for our survivors and responders, as it's been so successful. And now with cancers, the fund is running out of money. After securing the federal money for the 2nd Avenue subway, I'm now working to expand it to 125th Street in East Harlem. Recently, Secretary Buttigieg called and said we were galloping towards full funding grant agreement, which means that it'll be there to build it. As part of my fight for the Green New Deal, I am working to convert the entire postal and government fleets to electric vehicles so our country can cut down on polluting fossil fuels. We would use the over 3,500 post offices as charging stations. They charge the postal fleet at night and open it up to the public during the day. And after building a healthcare center at Queensbridge Houses, as I said, we're about to open a new one at Astoria Houses, I believe on March 8th. These are just a few of the examples of work that I've done and what I plan to do for the future. I've been fighting for progressive values my entire life. I'm not stopping now. I work for you, and I hope that my work in Congress merits your support, and I humbly ask for your endorsement in this upcoming campaign. Thank you. I yield back for questions.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. There's one question that we'll take from the general members here. So the mayor has asked the president for federal help addressing the violence in the city. What would your plan be?
Well, I think you have to listen to the plan. Certainly the mayor is a former police officer, and community groups, the police precinct community groups. I think that many of the services that can be paid for and done by other people, such as mental health services, should be done not by the police, but by social workers and mental health workers, and the collecting of the parking meters and all of this. They have given them so many efforts that really are police related. First and foremost, I would have them focus on safe streets and protecting people and responding to areas. Personally, I remember the spike that we had in crime when Mayor Dinkins was mayor, and he started community policing, where the police would walk with the community and get to know the community and become sort of more of the fabric. This past weekend, I was out at Astoria Houses where we're working to get the healthcare center, and they said, well, why don't you come over to Ravenswood? It's another housing development. We're having a cooking, we're teaching people how to cook. So I went to the cooking meeting, and I walked in. It was really a police event. The police were there cooking with the young people in the projects and basically becoming their friends, getting to know them and getting to know the community, which I think it's good if you can integrate their activities more and working and build trust in that area. I know that really government's main responsibility is to protect their people.
Wow.
I guess somebody's disagreeing, but to do usually foreign invasion or
who sent it?
I'll mute everyone for us for a moment, and then you can
The
unmute yourself
email,
again,
no,
Congresswoman.
the email should tell you who sent it.
Congresswoman, you just need to unmute yourself. I muted everyone.
Okay. Well, it's
Sorry
an
about
area we all need to work more on, and it is the number one concern that comes to my office from my constituents. They're concerned about the safety on the trains. They're concerned about the safety in the streets. I now notice when I go on the subway, people are lined up against the wall. They're not standing by the trains because of Michelle Gu's murder, which was just unspeakable. Really, we really need more help for mental illness. Her attacker was mentally ill. He shouldn't have been out on the streets. And I remember at one point we had facilities for people who are mentally ill. They closed them all and put them out on the streets. And that really isn't fair to them or to the public. I think we need to invest in more treatment and support for them. And we need to really try to figure out how to work together and not only respect the police, but hold them accountable if they abuse their power, overstep their power. We passed something called the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act in Congress, and that would have addressed the Breonna murder. It banned any more entries, no-knock entries. It banned chokeholds. It banned the knee hole. It banned all kinds of sort of aggressive, abusive practices of the police. And we have got that through the House. We are trying to get that through the Senate. So I would like to hear from the community on any ideas that they may have. I remember when I was on the city council, when there was violence in the streets, Mayor Dinkins would call us all to his house. He would call all of us to his home, Gracie Mansion, and sit everybody down and talk about it and try to get not only the electeds, but the leaders of the gangs, some of the troublemakers there to hear how they were going to be part of trying to help address crime. And I think a lot of his ideas were very good, and it brought down crime dramatically in our city.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and for answering that question. So before I move forward, just to respect everyone's time, I'm going to start to try to limit us to one question. So apologies to anyone who posted a question in the chat that we don't have time to get to. I just know that we have a lot of candidates left to hear from. So thank you so much again, Congresswoman Maloney. I'm going to turn it over to the Comptroller, Thomas DiNapoli, to address us next.
Thank you, Joe. I'm just trying to get the video going there. There we are. So good evening, everyone. First of all, I apologize. I don't have a beautiful background like everybody else. I left the state convention at the Sheraton this afternoon, rushing to get to Albany to do this from the hotel, but the thruway being the thruway, there was an accident, so we were sitting in traffic for an hour. So I'm doing it from the car in a closed rest area. So I apologize, it's not a more elegant opportunity to speak with you. But I really want to salute Joe, all the officers, the district leaders, state committee members, everyone involved with Chelsea Reform Democratic Club. I admire the fact that you keep the club going. I was president of the Great Neck Reform Democratic Club, and we went out of business a number of years ago. So that really is to your credit that you kept the reform part of politics alive and well, and I compliment you on that. We did have a great day today with the state convention, very pleased to be the designee of the party, and I also found out this afternoon that Working Families Party has endorsed me as well. So it's a good day. So if we end it with getting support from Chelsea Reform Dems, it'll be an even better day. You've supported so many great elected officials and candidates. I know a number of them have been on and more will be on. And I certainly want to echo, as I think Chuck Schumer said, the great work of Dick Godfrey. You've always been there for him. I had the privilege to serve with him in the legislature. Nobody's done government or politics or making change better than Dick Godfrey. So that's a tough act to follow, but I know you'll come up with a candidate that will carry on that tradition. State controller's job is very important, keeping the operations of state government moving forward. Been a challenge during the COVID environment, but I'm really proud of the work that our team has done to make sure that, especially during COVID, that the state workers got paid on time, pension checks got out, the contracts were approved, the payments to our small business vendors, to our nonprofits who depend on state grants and aid to local governments, that we're able to process that by and large in a very timely fashion. We focus on so many issues. You know, I don't have a vote, I don't make law or policy for the state, but we do have a voice, and often that voice is expressed through the policy reports that we put out. We've kept a particular focus in recent months on what's happening with the economy in New York City, because what happens in New York City is so important to the rest of the state. And for those of you who followed our work, you know, we've highlighted early on how the rent relief programs weren't working well. In fact, the money was getting out slowest in New York compared to all the other states. We continue to focus on various sectors of the city's economy. We just did an updated report on recreation, retail, and restaurant sectors. Still hurting, as all of you know. Omicron put us backward a bit, and certainly now just in those three sectors of the economy, we're still down about 170,000 jobs. So we still have a ways to go. We need to focus on that issue of recovery. Again, I'll try to run through things quick in the interest of time and to respect the other people that want to speak. We continue to do the audits. We do that of state agencies, certain city agencies, local governments outside of the city, across the state. That's another way that we try to make government more efficient and accountable to taxpayers. When we find people doing wrong, not just being inefficient, we work closely with Tish James, with our DAs across the state. We hold wrongdoers accountable, get taxpayer money back that might have been stolen. That investigative work is an important part of what we do. Big part of our responsibility is the state pension fund, third largest public pension fund in the country. And I'm very proud to say among the best, if not the best funded, over 99% funded. So that promise of retirement security for our public workers and retirees is something we take very seriously. We also have been working very hard to invest more money in New York State to be part of growth. We just had this week our 15th annual Emerging Manager MWBE conference. We have probably the most ambitious program in the country to have more management of pension fund assets by women and minority-owned firms. We're up to $27 billion of monies under management by either women-owned or firms of color. And we are also very active as a shareholder on a host of issues. So we try to impact on whether it's a labor issue, LGBTQ issue, LGBTQ equality issues, disability inclusion, getting more women and people of color on corporate boards has been a big priority of us. And in the aftermath of the George Floyd killing, we are now focusing on DEI issues. So at Amazon, we filed a shareholder resolution last year, got 44% vote on the first go around, to require Amazon to have a racial equity audit, independent, to look internally at their operations, how their employees are being treated. And we're filing that now at another four companies. So this has been a new area of our engagement. I'll just end on this. Climate's a big issue to us, both in terms of de-risking our portfolio, in terms of some of the dirtier, riskier investments, but also seizing on the opportunities of the emerging low carbon economy. We have a $20 billion goal for climate solutions, and I'm pleased to say we're about $15 billion out the door of that on sustainable investments and climate solutions. So we're doing a lot of interesting things. You know, I don't have the glamour job in state government, but we do a lot of very fundamental and important work to moving our state forward. And I want to continue to do this work, especially as we emerge from the challenge of the COVID pandemic. So let me end it there and see what questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. DiNapoli. Really appreciate you joining us. It's great to have you on with the club. There is a question actually from one of our assembly candidates. From Layla, will the Office of the Comptroller conduct an audit of the ESD's plan for the Penn area redevelopment, as the funding may be a serious liability to the state, as noted by Senator Krueger and Senator Hoylman in a recent op-ed?
I didn't hear the beginning of the question. Audit of which plan?
Of the ESD plan for the Empire Station complex at Penn Station.
Oh. Well, we don't audit plans, right? So we audit programs that are in place. So we don't do prospective audits. So that would not be an audit function for us.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, sir. We really appreciate you joining us. As we had said, we're going to limit it to one question so we can keep moving. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Next time I'll have a nicer background, I swear.
No, it looks great. So drive safe.
Thanks.
We're going to hear from two of the judicial candidates next before we get to the assembly candidates, which I know people are very excited to hear from. So first up, she's been patiently waiting, Hillary Gingold.
Hi, everybody. I want to first off let you know that not only was I reported out as most highly qualified for surrogate in New York County, but I also won the support of New York County, and it was a great vote. It was overwhelming, and I'm tickled pink. So I have to thank our district leaders, Sylvia DiPietro and Charles Bayer, as well as Paul Devlin and Marissa Redanti from Hell's Kitchen. But most importantly, I want to thank all of you, because I wouldn't be here without CRDC to begin with. For those of you who saw me when we had our forum, you know my background. I did trust in estates for 25 years. I've been your judge for the last 4 years, and going forward, I hope to do right by you and by the people of the city of New York. And I look forward to being the next surrogate. So I appreciate your support and your vote of confidence. And many of you have reached out to me privately and told me that you have a lot of confidence in me, and I promise not to let any of you down and do the right thing. Does anybody any questions? I'm glad to answer. Anybody have anything that they want to let me know? Hello, Joanne.
Thank you, Judge Gingold. We appreciate you joining us.
We
I
love
didn't
you,
see
Hillary.
anything come
That's all
in.
I wanted to say.
Thank you, David Warren, and Fran, who takes my daily calls, and Joe. Thank you very much, and all of you that are here tonight that I've reached out and spoken to all of you, as many of you as possible. I wish you all the best. I'm going to leave you all. Good night, guys.
Good luck with the rest of your evening, Hillary. Thank you.
Thank you. 2 o'clock.
And then next up, we have Lisa Sokoloff. Lisa, you want to join us? Lisa, I believe you're on mute.
Yeah, well, at least my husband enjoyed it. Good evening, everyone. I'm running for re-election in the 3rd Municipal District, which is your district. 10 years ago, I ran a contested race, and with your help, I was victorious. I've been on the bench since then, and in every part that I've been assigned, I hope I've made a positive change for the benefit of the litigants and the attorneys. And with your help and endorsement, which I see tonight, I hope to continue that work. Like Hillary Gingold, I was also at the executive committee where all the district leaders were present. I received the endorsement of the county leader and the executive committee by acclamation. And I hope that you will support me again this time as I seek re-election. Does anyone have a question for me? Well, like
Nothing
my
coming in.
colleague Hillary, I have other.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I
As
can.
your district leader, I don't have a question, but I welcome you to run another 10 years from the 3rd Judicial District, which is our district. And as you know, myself and my co-leader, besides the other district leaders in the County of New York, have warmly supported you for another 10 years. And we look forward to your continued service. And as your district leader, I thank you for the last 10 years and look forward to your next 10 years.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. That means a lot to me, not only as my friend and my district leader, but also as a person who practices in my area. Thank you all and have, oh, thank you, Joanne. I see many of you from that race 10 years ago, Donathan, David, Charles. Thank you very, very much and have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
All right.
Thank you, Judge Sokoloff. So as I mentioned, next up, I would like to go through the assembly candidates. So as we already had a forum just a couple of weeks ago and dedicated more than 2 hours to discussing who would be the best candidate, I do want to limit their speeches to closer to a minute. And we'll also, again, have the opportunity, as we didn't have a chance then, to get questions from the field. Because there are shorter questions, I would ask that if you have a question, you do note who the question is to, just to keep us productive and keep us moving along here. I'm going to go in no particular order. I'm just going based on who's on our screen. So the first person I see is Harrison Marks, who is a candidate for 75th AD Assembly. So Harrison, the floor is yours for a minute.
Thank you so much, Joe. Can people hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Thank you. Hello, CRDC. I entered this race, unfortunately, too late to participate in the CRDC candidate forum, so I am especially appreciative of this opportunity to introduce myself. My name is Harrison Marks. I'm a lifelong New Yorker, and my wife, Jennifer, and I are raising our son, Henry, in Chelsea on 21st and 7th. I've spent my career as a problem solver. I served in the Obama administration. I've advised top business leaders. I'm a lawyer, and I've spearheaded the Reimagine New York Commission's support for our state's workforce, small businesses, and the arts. Throughout my career, I've focused on two things. One is making government work better for everyone, and two is really listening to people facing challenges so that I can try to find solutions. Now I'm running to represent our community in the Assembly. I'm running on a substantive platform focused on three things: navigating the public health crisis, ensuring that we have a thriving neighborhood, and bringing our government and community into the future. Thank you again for allowing me to introduce myself, and I would love to answer your questions and hear from you.
Thank you so much, Harrison. Are there any, I don't see any questions that have popped up just yet. So here's what I think maybe we'll do is maybe we'll go to each candidate, and then if people have a question, like I mentioned, they can post it in the chat. I think that might be the easiest way to get us going through. So again, no particular order, just go until I see on the screen. Amber, you're up.
Good evening. Thank you. I'm Amber Nicosia. I also live here in Chelsea with my wife and our two young children. I have 4 generations of my family that have lived and worked in this district, and this is where our family intends on staying. So I'm incredibly committed to not only addressing, but solving a lot of our quality of life issues. In particular, I want to continue to help our small businesses. I want to create more healthcare centers in addition to the 2 that we're already bringing to the community. And I want to work to get true affordable housing. I work with affordable housing communities. I understand the challenges that the affordable housing that we have is not a solution for our residents. And I want to take that expertise and bring it to Albany to figure out a solution that's really going to work. I am committed to working with all of you to make our streets safer and cleaner and to keep this an incredibly diverse, vibrant community. I love this community. And again, I'm very committed to staying here and addressing these issues. I hope to earn your support. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amber. Wonderful. So just regarding the questions, I'm just going to do my best to grab a question from the chat as I see people are writing them. So thank you. Moving forward, I will kick it over to Layla, our next candidate for Assembly.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, CRDC, for having us. My name is Layla Logizico. I am an immigrant. I am a mother. I am a community organizer. I've been living in New York for 25 years. I've been serving on Community Board 5 for 16 years. I have experience in the field dealing with a slew of issues, including homelessness, hospital closings, class size reduction, and pushing against gentrification. I'm knowledgeable on a large variety of policy issues that concern our district. Once in Albany, I will go to work on day one, drafting bills to address housing, healthcare, air pollution, and environment, as well as reforming our campaign and ethics laws. I will also get to work negotiating the budget year after year to bring back the bacon for our district, making sure our district needs are addressed. And finally, I will have robust constituent services with evening and weekend hours, because this is crucial as the role of an assembly member to provide this service for all of you, our constituents. I've been the champion in the fight against the Penn Area Redevelopment Plan, a plan that would displace thousands of residents. I'm very pleased that Senator Krueger and Holman penned an op-ed against the plan a couple of days ago in the Daily News. I am the only candidate here in this race with a proven track record standing up to special interests, and I will continue to fight for a more independent government system, fighting against the real estate industrial complex. I hope that it will win your endorsement for Assembly for the 75th District of New York. Thank you.
Thank you, Layla. Next up, we'll go to Lowell Kern.
Hi, thank you, Joe. I'm Lowell Kern. I'm running for the State Assembly. I've been serving this community since my sons were playing in the Seal Park. First as PTA president at PS 11, and then as a member of the board of the Greenwich Village Little League, which covers this area as well. and most recently as chair of Community Board 4. I was a member of the executive committee of CRDC for almost a decade. I apologize for missing the candidate forum. My 90-year-old father had a medical emergency, and obviously I needed to be with him. I am the most experienced candidate in this race. I am the only candidate that has helped create affordable housing. I am the only candidate that has helped create new green spaces and open new parks. And when it comes to the biggest development project in our district, Penn Station, I am the only candidate that has already achieved changes to the plan for the good of our neighborhood, adding affordable housing and community facilities. The plan isn't perfect. It's not right yet. It can't be approved yet, but I'm the only one who's gotten changes made so far. And I'm the person you want in that room with the governor and ESD to achieve the best outcome. I promise you that I always put no worries, Jeff. I promise you that I will always put your best interests front and center, and I would love to have your endorsement. Thank you.
Thank you, Lowell, and handling the little glitch there. So
I've chaired enough meetings, Joe, to know that this stuff happens.
So thank you, Lowell. Next up, we will go to Tony Simone.
Hi, everyone. Great to see everyone tonight. I can't wait to see all of you in person. I am Tony Simone. I'm an organizer and advocate. I've been working with the West Side communities my entire adult life. I've led fights for tenant rights, immigrant rights, marriage equality, and accessible green space. I've also directed volunteer efforts and after Superstorm Sandy and led local initiatives to reduce hate crimes. It takes collective action to solve our most complex problems. And I'm running for assembly because I'm the person who will be willing to bring everyone to the table and get things done. I want to work with all of you to make our community a better place. Regardless of the outcome tonight, I hope you all consider strongly supporting me in the endorsement vote. I will work with each and every one of you to make our community better. I've learned, we learned anything from this economic and health crisis, is that these problems we have are not new, they've only been amplified. But I believe there's a path forward, and I think together we will build a better city, district, and state for all of us. I'm running to build and transform our district. I was raised by a working class mom from Peru, an immigrant mom from Peru. My dad drove a yellow taxi cab and trucks to support us. Times weren't always easy, but they taught me, along with my grandfather, union delegate, that nothing gets solved alone. You must do it collectively together. You must work out your differences to solve actual problems. And I've done that, and I will do that again. I've done it at the city council. I've done it being an advocate for open space at Hudson River Park. I hope you can join us and we can together solve the challenges of our state and district. I enjoy talking to all of you, many of you over the last few weeks, and have heard you. And I hope we can continue this conversation and hope to earn your support. I look forward to meeting all of you in person for those who I've not worked with in the past. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tony. And last but not least, Chris LeBron.
Thank you so much, Joe. Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris LeBron. I'm incredibly excited to be here. Since we last were able to talk and engage in the forum on February 2nd, I was proud to receive the endorsement of the Hell's Kitchen Democratic Club, currently the only candidate with a Democratic Club endorsement. This race is incredibly important, as many of my colleagues and opponents have said. There are many issues that we're facing in the state. We have a health crisis, we have a housing crisis, we have an education crisis. Most importantly, we need to ensure that what is going on in Albany works hand in hand with City Council. To address our housing crisis, I'm the only candidate right now that has actively worked against special interest, Airbnb and VRBO, to end illegal hotels, something that's hit our communities of Hell's Kitchen and Chelsea equally. And we've returned housing into the market. I've actively worked in City Council, and I've been on Community Board 4 now for 5 years. I've also represented my millennials on Manhattan, the Manhattan Young Democrats. If you'd like to ask me any questions beyond this forum, you can email me at chris@chrislebron4newyork.com. I'm always available to you, and I'm incredibly interested to hear what your priorities are. Thank you.
Wonderful. So thank you so much, Chris, and thank you to our assembly candidates for adhering to the roughly 60 seconds. I am going to go in the order that you spoke, just to keep this organized. The first question is for Harrison. Harrison, you mentioned that you want to take the government into the future, and we were just curious to hear what do you mean by that? Elaborate on that.
Thank you. So with that, I'm referring to several things. One is digitizing state government, making certain that our government services, everything from visiting the DMV to accessing the court system, is possible to be done digitally, which I think is really important in the moment that we are experiencing now, was we're having this call remotely, and is important for the disability community in the city as well. That's number one. Number two is really addressing climate change, which is something that our government has not adequately done. So making certain that the government is focusing on the issues of the future. Three is guaranteeing internet access for all, which is something that our work on the Reimagine New York Commission brought us some of the way there, but making certain that government is providing for this basic utility, which is what internet is. And then finally is boosting local entrepreneurship and making certain that the government is advocating for new businesses in this community that we need. So bringing government into the future and ensuring that government is supporting the society that we will have in the future.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Harrison.
Thanks,
I apologize. Actually, we're going to go slightly out of order here. So Layla, we'll come right back to you. But I just had this next in on Lowell. This is from another one of our members regarding, that you had sent a letter to CRDC and didn't really reference transportation, subways or buses. What would you do regarding transportation if you were in the assembly?
Okay, thanks for the question. The first thing is the way to solve the transportation issues in this city, the congestion issues, the transit issues, is to force people to use mass transit. But in order to do that, we have to improve Penn Station, which we've already touched on. The Port Authority bus terminal, there is a plan for that Community Board 4 has put in place. I think Bert Lazarin is on, and he helped spearhead that when he was chair, and I've continued his work. There will be a new Port Authority bus terminal that will get buses off of the street, which will help clear off the streets, and will provide more bus service to encourage people to use mass transit there. The fun thing about the new Port Authority bus terminal is that there's going to be the main terminal. The terminal that exists now is will be the eastern terminal. There will be a western terminal as well, and that's right at 41st and 10th. And when the 7 line was extended down to Hudson Yards, there was a plan for a subway station at 41st and 10th, and it never got built. Well, if you're going to have the bus terminal there, you need to build that subway station at 41st and 10th. That's up to the MTA and the state, and that's a state issue, and we need to get that done. Finally, we need to get cars off the street. Congestion pricing is only part of the problem, only part of the solution to that problem. I would support certain exemptions, especially for NYCHA residents, to congestion pricing, but we need to do more to get for-hire vehicles, limit the number of for-hire vehicles on the streets. We need to get people using mass transit, and that is the answer to most of our congestion and transportation issues. So it's new Penn Station, it's the new Port Authority, it's additional subway stations, and after the 41st and 10th station, the tracks come all the way down to my back door at 25th and 11th, and there should be a station there too, connected all the way to 14th Street eventually. But I don't know if that's going to happen in our lifetimes. So it's the bus, the train, the subway, and getting the cars off the street. And that is what will help us. That will also help our environment. There is so much, the worst air quality in the city is in Hell's Kitchen, right around the Lincoln Tunnel. And if we've got people using buses, you'll have less cars going through the Lincoln Tunnel. We'll get more green space also out of the Port Authority plan, as more parks are going to be built and more affordable housing will be built as a result of that as well. I think that covers the basics without going on for the next 2 hours, Joe. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Lowell. And I want to say thank you to everyone for these great questions. I wish I could give everyone credit, but where credit is due, but there have been some really well thought out questions here coming from our general members. For Amber, I apologize, it was actually Amber than Layla. For Amber, we have a 2-part question. One is a yes/no question. Because we've seen in the chat a lot of people talking about not taking pledges from real estate development. So will you take a pledge right here not to take money from real estate development first? And then I'll ask the second part.
No, I have not, and no, I will not.
Okay, well, hey, definitive. So thank you, Amber. And then the question for you is around healthcare. So You know, there's a lot of people who believe we need universal health care in New York. What would your approach be to universal health care?
I mean, I think that listen, you know, Dick Gottfried has done an extraordinary amount of work. And what we really need is somebody who is going to continue to uphold what he started and then see it through and finished. And I am committed. I am absolutely committed to seeing this through. I have worked on this. I've worked on this not only in New York City, but I have worked on this upstate in counties doing education programs, trying to get residents who are represented in Albany to understand why this is relevant, not only for us, but for them. And I think that is a lot of what an assembly person is supposed to do. It's a personality job. You have to be approachable and you have to be able to build relationships with people. You have to be able to win them over so that they're going to support the kind of programs that not only are going to benefit them, but that we desperately need here in New York City. And the healthcare crisis is real. It's happening every day. I see it. Our family's impacted by it. Our friends are impacted by it. Here at Penn South, one of the things that we've done is we've actually had to take the initiative to put 2 different healthcare centers in this community because we saw the need for it and it wasn't there. So residents in the community shouldn't be burdened with this. This is something I think that should be coming from a state level. And I think that legislation can help solve this, not only within this community, but within the district. It's something that we just have to continue to push and pursue. Healthcare for all is part of that solution. The Child Health Act, it is in place, it's working, it's making an extraordinary difference. We need to build on that, but we need to be able to do that for people of all ages.
Wonderful. Thank you, Amber. Layla, there was a question that just came in for you. What is your position on funding for public education when the state seems to be intent on funding privatized charter schools?
Yeah, thank you so much. So I am against private charter schools that are basically siphoning revenue from a public education system into a system that allows for example, weeding students that may not bring the scores that are desirable for the school. It also allows for private funding of these schools, something that public schools cannot do. So I am strongly opposed to the construction of new charter schools in the district. In terms of continuing to fund public education in New York, you know, there was a lawsuit 10 years ago. It was the campaign for fiscal equity that basically told the state that they had not contributed what they owed to New York City. So this money still is owed to New York City, and the state needs to do a better job at actually allocating this money, because that's what the judges said. You know, in terms of funding all these programs, generally speaking, I think that we need to be a little more aggressive about cutting on tax exemptions that the state gives essentially to developers and large corporations. One of them is Madison Square Garden. MSG, as you know, doesn't pay real estate taxes since the 80s for some obscure reason I'm not going to bore you with, but this is simply not acceptable. So we need to aggressively go after these tax exemptions and these tax subsidies that, for example, Vornado would be receiving if this Penn Station project goes through. This is not in the interest of the public. This is not in the interest of the services that the state provides to our constituents, and we need to be very aggressive so that, you know, this revenue is not depleted from the coffers of the state.
Wonderful. Thank you, Layla. Tony, the next question is for you. What are your views on MSG and the Empire Station complex to enable the top to bottom renovations that Penn Station needs? And if you're supportive, how would you help get it done?
I'm not supportive of the current plan. It's too high, it's too dense. The affordability, the housing, affordable housing should be in the initial stages of the plan. We clearly need a first-rate transportation system for our great city. but this plan doesn't do that. And I agree with a lot of my competitors and the other opponents that this current plan is not acceptable. I know the need for offices, commercial offices, but we don't need that many offices right now. We have plenty of office space. I think we need to all work together, CRDC and everyone who's been working so hard for so long. You know, when I worked at the city council, folks said the West Side Stadium was a done deal, but we defeated the West Side Stadium. And I don't think this plan is a good plan. That said, I do think we need to redevelop Penn Station in a better way than the current plan allows.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate you answering that. Our final question is for Chris LeBron. Chris, how would you legislatively address the problem of massive subsidies to developers? How might you address the disinvestment and maintenance issues in NYCHA and limited equity housing without relying upon privatization?
Thank you so much for that question. I was the policy director for the former public housing chair and city council. NYCHA means the world to me because my family came out of NYCHA and afforded me the opportunity to sit in front of you today as a candidate. How do you address legislatively what is going on right now? Well, 421A and the proposed 485W is one and the same. 485W being proposed by the governor is actually going to limit the number of developers that can partake in the program, which is not good for housing. It's not good for community boards. It's not good for housing advocates negotiating. We need to go back to the table and address a funded program that brings truly affordable. That being said, I do support the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, which is being held by State Senator Zelnor Myrie. This is one of those great pieces of legislation that'll provide an individual tenant or a group of tenants the first right to purchase property. Additionally, the governor has slated in her executive budget $25 billion to preserve or build 100,000 houses. It's not enough. I think a lot of that money can go to community land trust, specifically in Chelsea and in Hell's Kitchen as a pilot program to purchase points of land so that way stakeholders here can decide how it gets used. You know, we can no longer live in a society of permanent renters. And so I think that's those two opportunities, TOPA and land trust are great opportunities to get out of the rent cycle to own cycle. Additionally, with NYCHA, Senator Kavanaugh has proposed changes for the NYCHA land trust. This will provide an opportunity for NYCHA to get away from like a city agency and jump in and function a little bit more like a property manager does. Additionally, we need to make sure that we're legislating right now for those that have transitioned already over to RADPAC, the expanded tenant rights that they deserve that they once had in Section 9. We can't walk away from that. We have, much like Layla said, with regards to ensuring that our children are properly funded for their education, we owe years and years and years of funding. And there's been generations of disinvestment in NYCHA that is wholly inappropriate. And my 93-year-old grandmother lives in Amsterdam houses still, right behind Lincoln Center. The long delays on maintenance there is unacceptable. Yeah. We can work together with the Black, Latino, Asian Caucus and with the Progressive Caucus to properly fund NYCHA. We can work with our Congress members to properly fund Section 9, and we can legislate to preserve and expand those rights for those who have gone from Section 9 to Section 8 in RADPAC. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you to our Assembly candidates for joining us, for making your statements, and for answering our questions. I know this is a very important race.
Thank you.
Next up, we have our thank you. Next up, we have our State Senator Brad Hoylman. Brad, I see you're on here. If you need a second.
Hi, everyone. It's good to see everyone. Sorry, I'm in a transit situation, but I definitely wanted to congratulate the Assembly candidates for their really smart responses and their plans. I'm looking forward to working with whoever wins this important nomination, really, to fill the Godspeed seat after 50 years. It's going to be quite a challenge, but it is very apparent to me that we have amazing talent running for this seat. So just wanted to start with that. And of course, I see my good friend and predecessor, Senator Dwayne, and I had to follow his footsteps. So I kind of feel for whoever's following Dick Gottfried's footsteps in that challenge. But, you know, we're right now negotiating a $212 billion budget in Albany. Our budget letters, in fact, go out tomorrow. Our priorities are being set forth by the conference. What's top of mind for me is how we're going to protect tenants as we exit the pandemic. So many of those who are unable to pay their rent. I hope we can get good cause eviction in the budget. I'm hopeful that I can continue my work and the wide range of areas that are the mission of the Judiciary Committee. Everything from the Adult Survivors Act, which is legislation I advanced to allow adult survivors of child sexual abuse to have their day in court, to the Tenant Safe Harbor Act, which has protected many tenants from eviction during the pandemic, to taking on climate change head on and ensuring that the legislation, the landmark legislation we passed 2 years ago, has the teeth that it needs to make sure that New York is a leader and continues to be the leader in addressing climate change, to our public school system. As a public school parent, I have a bill that I hope to advance that's going to shine a bright light on charter schools and ensure that they're audited just like our public school system. Those are a few areas that I'm working on, and I hope to continue to work with CRDC in the coming months, not to mention clamping down on tourist shoppers, making sure that Hudson River Park has the resources it needs, fighting for a livable city and safe streets, and ensuring that mass transit is adequately funded, and ensuring that we have more psychiatric beds and are able to address so many of our neighbors on the streets who have mental health issues and nowhere to go. But just thank you for your consideration. It's been an honor to represent you and this amazing district, which has now changed from the 27th to the 30th and runs now from Canal Street to 81st, or as my daughter said, the Museum of Natural History, which is its northernmost point, as well as Central Park and along Broadway. So it's a fantastic district. It's an honor to represent you, and thank you for your consideration tonight.
Thank you, Senator Hoylman. I'm not sure, I know you're traveling, so I don't know if you're able to take a question or not.
Sure.
Okay, well, we got one who just came in, so hot off the presses here. Brad, do you support the same legislation which was recently passed to cover the Mitchell-Lama co-ops for the redevelopment, or for the redevelopment co-ops like Penn South and Amalgamated? So I apologize, I don't even know what that one time.
Yes, you know, I also support legislation that it would make it harder for Mitchell-Lamas to exit the system. And I support the governor in her efforts to create a new Mitchell-Lama. You know, I've heard some discussion about Penn Station tonight, and I really appreciate that. You know, Senator Krueger and I have called for an examination of the numbers before we proceed with any development, for sure, and before ESD signs off on this project. But I also want to say that this is a huge opportunity around Penn Station to build more affordable housing, more social housing, more supportive housing, and in particular, the new Mitchell-Lama that we keep talking about. That's something that everyone wants to build, but we've never had the social momentum to build that. So I look forward to working on that issue with everyone here. My daughters are fighting in the background.
Very cute. And thank you, Katya, for the great question.
Cute unless you were here. Not so cute if you're here. What?
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Senator Hoylman. So,
Yep.
before we're going to go to the Democratic committee race in just a moment, but I would be remiss having Assemblymember Gottfried on here, and obviously, this important opportunity. I wanted to turn it over to Dick to see if he would like to say anything before I go to the Democratic committee. I don't know if he, perhaps he doesn't.
Thank you.
Well, if you, go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. It's been wonderful working with CRDC all these years that it's been part of my district, and even actually before it was part of my district. And I want to thank the club for all of that. And thank you for the terrific meeting you're having this evening. I just want to quickly say, as many of you may know, I'm supporting Tony Simone for the Assembly. Part of the reason is that he really knows the job of an elected official because he's worked in state senate and city council offices on community issues, on constituent problems, on issue organizing, like around same-sex marriage. He really has, I think, the best sense of the job of anybody running. And I'm delighted to support him. He's a smart, hardworking progressive. Tonight, I don't know if you're going to take up the civil court seat that Dan Court is running for. He's a colleague of mine in the Assembly. He's not running for re-election. Ran for DA. He's also a strong, smart, level-headed progressive. He did a lot of the work on the legislation that helped end a lot of the abuse in the bail system. I think Dan Court will make a terrific civil court judge, and I hope CRDC supports him. Again, I want to thank CRDC for its staunch progressive politics and for working, for giving me the opportunity to work with CRDC all these years. That's it.
Ithank you so much, Dick. And I think on behalf of everyone at CRDC, thank you for your tireless work for our community. We'll be sad to see you go, but thank you, sir. Next up, as we heard at the very beginning of this, there was a nomination from the floor. So there are two candidates for Democratic State Committee woman, Francine Hasselborn and Kathy Nazari. I'd like to give both of them the opportunity to speak for a couple of minutes and answer a question. So Fran, would you like to go first to get us started? Fran, I think you're on mute. Still can't hear you.
She's on mute.
I'm unmuting myself, okay?
There you go.
Okay, I'm sorry that the screen is pixelating, but I can't do anything about that. Anyhow, I have been the state committee person for the last six and a half years, and I very much enjoy it. I think I have spent most of my adult life in politics. First, when I lived in New Jersey, I was actually on the first campaign of a guy who's still in Congress now, when I lived in Paterson, New Jersey. In any case, I see my job as two prongs. One is my involvement with CDC, which I find to be very important. One of the things I've been working on is to redo the Constitution, okay? Or look at it and bring it up to date if there are things that we need to change. I'm very proud of that involvement. I have worked and been the petition chair for, I don't know, 4 times, 5 times. That's one of the nuts and bolts of the club is something that I've done. As my responsibility for the New York State Democratic Committee, today I spent, the last day and a half actually I spent on the state is having its meeting, and we were voting for Kathy and the rest of the ballot. Now, I'm also involved in the Progressive Caucus, and that is only about 25 people who are, who are presently members of the Progressive Caucus in the body of 350 persons. It's open to anybody who wants to join, who's on the state committee and who has $20. It's not, there's nothing very formal about it, but the people who want to join do it. So one of the things we do is we have initiatives. Because of the way the committee is structured, it has to go to an executive committee to be okay to be brought before the full body. So I have a couple of interesting things that have happened. I'll talk about the latest initiatives. One of them is all around I was going to say all around the country, but all around the state of New York, when we have petitions, the language is rather strange. So we have asked that you add things like for transgender people, the them, the they, the their, whatever the designation is that they choose. And so this is up for discussion now. The second thing that just happened today is that due to the Democratic Committee of the United States has rules about who can speak at the convention. And we were kind of upset. We had a progressive meeting last week that some of the candidates like Tom Swazi and Jumani would not be able to speak. So they spoke to us and we had made an initiative and there was lots of back and forth with the committee, with Jay Jacobs, who was the head of the New York State Democratic Committee. And it was agreed that they could speak this morning before the convention. And so we had a long dissertation by Tom Swazi, who is a very long speaker, also quite good, and Jumani. So this is very important that this Progressive Caucus operates to try to change some of the things that are in the New York State, the way New York State is going. It's obvious from looking at the convention today that it's wonderful because of the diversity and all kinds of things happening all over the state. You hear from people who live in places where there are more cows than people, but you see that there is a movement towards the left. And there's also a movement, a union movement, and that was rather exciting. A union movement all around the state. It isn't just happening in New York City. And so I ask your support to vote for me again because I've worked really hard at it. My other thing is that Jerry Nadler is supporting me, Carolyn Maloney supports me. I work with the electeds whenever I can on a personal level. I have petitioned for Jerry. I have made calls for Jerry. We have petitioned for Carolyn in our old district, which we are about to change. There were a couple of EDs that belonged to Carolyn, and actually past President David Warren who has a friend named Shelby that's part of Carolyn's group, and we got very interested in her and have worked for her. And that's what I can continue to do. I also have done on a personal level, my home state has been Pennsylvania, and a few of you may notice my speech. If you listen long enough, you can tell I come from Philadelphia. And I have worked with the Pennsylvania progressives in making calls. I love to make calls. And in places like Berks County, Pennsylvania, people answer their telephones, much more so than I have in New York. So thank you for listening to me. Any questions that you have, I'm happy to answer. And I forgot that Eric has endorsed me. I asked him a long time ago. Thank you, Eric. Thank you so much. Here I am.
Thank you, Fran. Oh, I didn't see any questions get typed in, so I know people may have just been listening. So let me go to Kathy first, and if you have a question for Fran or for Kathy, please post it in the chat. So Kathy Nazari, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Joe. First, I'd like to say thank you to Evelyn for nominating me, and I want to thank Francine for her service to the club and to the district for these however many years. I'm Kathy Nazari. I've been a member of CRDC for I think about 5 years. I not, with the pandemic, it's hard to keep track of time. I previously served on the executive board of this club. I'm now chairing the committee. I created a number of programs for the club. I've served as both county committee and as a judicial delegate for the last few years. I volunteer regularly to help seniors in our community. I am an animal rights and environmental activist and have created a coalition of 35 member organizations to advocate for protections, both at the city and state level, and have had amazing successes at getting bills passed. I have strong relationships with city council members, state senators, and assembly members alike. I have a lot to contribute as your state committee woman. I have a lot, I'm friends with Louis Cholden Brown, our state committee man. Recently, CRDC has undergone a number of changes in leadership, and I look forward to being a part of that change to make this club and district stronger and more committed to serving the community. I guess I should mention also that I've worked on several campaigns, on Eric Botcher's campaign, Gordon Johnson, Tom Swain, Brad Hoylman, Jerry Nadler, and I forget who else, but I hope that you'll vote to give me the club's endorsement for our state committee, and I thank you for your time.
Hi,
Oh, and by the way, I just wanted to mention that someone had just sent me a message saying that my name is not on the ballot. Joe is going to be sending out a new ballot for a state committee. I guess we should be voting on that ballot and not on this ballot.
Thank you, Kathy. You read my mind. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this, with Kathy's nomination for Democratic State Committee Woman, we will be, the easiest way for us to rectify this is we'll run a secondary ballot tomorrow. It will be exclusive, or it will be exclusively for this race, which is the same thing we had to do last year. So I think that'll just be the easiest way for us to do it. So
No, I object. It's not in the Constitution. Tonight is the night. I'm sorry. I don't consider that a particular way.
well,
I agree.
I can send it tonight, but
Now, I would suggest as your district leader that you send it tonight, and because it is the night we're voting. And I would also like to say that the name was not put up earlier for election. So technically she would be considered, if we were meeting face to face, she would have been a write-on, we would write her name in. So, and she has that right, Kathy Nazari. She would, we would have written her name on a ballot and gone in the back and counted the ballot. So I agree with Fran that tonight is the night to do that. On another note, though, that I'd like to greatly endorse our current state committee woman as someone who followed me as the state committee woman for a number of years from this club. And she followed me at a time where basically there was no progressive action up in Albany. When I went into Albany, I would have to sit with the farmers, which was not a very happy note for me. Over the years, Fran and I, for the last maybe 8 to 9 years, have not only petitioned together, she petitioning for me as a state committee woman when she was a member of the club, and then petitioning for herself and many, many candidates. We spent many hours binding petitions. Fran has been an active follower and a supporter of many of our elected officials, donating for them. She's spent hours and hours phone banking on many, many progressive points that were important in the area. She's the chair of our Constitution Committee, which for another year has labored along. She has also chaired for our club the banquet that we had, or the brunch, the spring brunch, and she probably will continue. All of these hours, if they were to add up, are daunting. We really appreciate her continued service. I do, as her as one of her district leaders, and I ask the members of this club to please support her and keep her in that position for another 2 years. And I yield the floor to my co-leader, Charles Bayer. You're on mute, Charles.
Good, I did. Thank you, Sylvia. I too want to join in endorsing Fran Hesselhoff for another term as our state committee woman. She has been a progressive leader of this club. She has done numerous work for this club, and my relations with Fran, I've only seen positive work for the club, and I don't understand why remove somebody who has done the kind of work she's done for this club, the kind of work she's done for the community, and I would wholly endorse her re-election.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Sylvia.
Thank you. Thank you, Charles and Sylvia. So at this point, I will send out a new ballot. I'm going to work on that right now. I didn't see any questions come through for the two candidates for Democratic State Committee one. I did want to open this to the floor for some of the additional candidates, not candidates, excuse me, elected officials that we had on. I saw Councilman Eric Botcher. Eric, I'm happy to give, cede the floor to you if you have anything you'd like to share with the group as well. Did we lose Eric? Trying to see if we lost him. It sounds like we did. Well, this will take me just a moment to get this ballot out and up and running. Dan Quart, I know that you're on as well. Dan, would you like to address everyone?
Thank you very much. And for a few minutes of your time tonight, I'm State Assembly Member Dan Quart from the East Side in Midtown East. But this year I'll be running for civil court, specifically the 9th Judicial District, which is in part of Chelsea Reform Club's area. I wanted to thank many people, but the leadership of Chelsea Reform Club for their support last year when I ran for district attorney in Manhattan, but really for their friendship and getting to know so many people and getting to know Penn South and the area in and around where Chelsea Reform does so much of the good work that it's done over many, many decades. And especially to Charles Bayer and Sylvia, who handles judicial matters, but it's really a bit broader than that, because the work Sylvia does is for the county and making sure good lawyers become judges and good judges ascend through the ranks. So thank you, Sylvia, for your work for the county in that regard. And I would be remiss if not mentioning my friend and my colleague, Dick Gottfried. I will not try and encapsulate 52 years of incredible service to this state, but I've had a front row seat to see leadership in action as head of the Manhattan delegation, on the floor defending bills and budget bills for hours upon hours, or in conference saying difficult things that needed to be heard. Dick has been a true leader, and I've seen it firsthand, and I thank him for his support and his friendship of me as I run for the civil court this year. I've been a practicing attorney for 24 years, pro bono work on the 18B panel representing indigent defendants, as well as through the Legal Aid Society, where the chief judge awarded me as one of the city's top pro bono attorneys. And I'm running for judge this year to take that work ethic, take that commitment, and apply it in the courtroom. And I think I can do what I did for my constituents on the East Side, but on a grander scale for thousands of litigants, whether they're pro se or individuals who come before me over the next 10 years. So I hope I have the club's support and to be on the petition for the 9th Judicial District. I know it's been a long evening, so I'll stop there. And thank you everyone for your time and hopefully your support.
Thank you, Dan. I did see one final question in here, and then I don't see any other candidates on. So Katya, you've had a couple of very good ones. Do you agree that Eric Adams has been unfair misrepresenting Alvin Bragg's positions? That's a testy one. Maybe I should have finished reading it, but yeah. Dan, what's your thoughts on that?
Yes, I think, well, specifically, I think the police commissioner, I've read the police commissioner's critique, but we'll presume the police commissioner speaks for the mayor. I think my record on criminal legal reform is pretty straightforward, and there was more that Alvin Bragg and I agreed on during the campaign that disagreed. I take the question as meaning that the critique of bail reform or bail efforts has anything to do with the rise of crime, and that critique is accurate. So to the extent the question is, was the mayor making that connection, or was the police commissioner? They were factually inaccurate in making that connection. The recidivism rate from those who would not have been released, who are now released under our current bail reform laws, are about 2%. And so there's no connection between the spike in hate crimes, the spike in violent crime, or any other crime level, and the changes in laws that we make in Albany. And to suggest to suggest the contrary, as I think the question suggests, is simply inaccurate and misleading and some level of demagoguery.
Well, thank you, Dan. And I did see that he jumped back on, Councilman Botcher. Nice to say that, Councilman Botcher, aren't used to saying Eric. So good to have you on. I think you may be our final speaker. So any closing thoughts for us?
Sure, I appreciate you inviting me to speak, and hi everyone. And I just have to say, we really have a great group of folks running to fill some very big shoes. We have a great range of candidates running. Assemblymember Gottfried, I first met you when I was a staffer at the City Council 13 years ago, and I've learned a lot from you over the years about government, and being in a meeting with Dick Gottfried and the powers that be is an educational experience, because he knows how to, through his questioning, just get to the core of an issue and get to the heart of a problem. And I've seen him take on some really intimidating foes and win. And we're going to miss you, but I'm not going to say that, because I know that you're still going to be around and we're still going to see you. And I know that we're going to have a hell of a going away celebration for you. We're not going to skimp on that. And it'll be in person. It'll be in person. I really look forward to seeing everyone in person. I want to say to CRDC, thank you so much for allowing me to serve you, for giving me the opportunity to serve you and to represent you on the City Council. CRDC's endorsement was very meaningful in my race for City Council. And the last 6 weeks, I got to say, I wasn't really sure if it would feel that different than working at the City Council as a staffer, but it's like totally different. It's been the most exciting 6 weeks of my life in so many ways. Put together a really awesome team. I kept some of Corey's folks and brought on some new folks, and getting to work with such an incredible team and getting to step out on some of the big issues of the day. I've been appointed to 7 committees: the Sanitation Committee, the Mental Health Committee, Land Use, Zoning, Civil Service and Labor, Consumer Affairs, and Public Safety. And I was elected co-chair of the Manhattan delegation. A big issue that I've been speaking a lot about is the issue of mental health, the mental health crisis in New York, that frankly, we haven't heard enough about. Our leaders haven't been speaking enough about what's really going on with mental health in New York City. And it was the death of Michelle Go in January in Times Square that really spurred the latest discussion about mental health. And so I put out an 8-point plan. It was a Daily News op-ed published, got really, really great response from mental health professionals from all over, even outside of New York. 8 things that we need to do: stop the reversal of inpatient psychiatric beds, expand the Fountain House Clubhouse model, real discharge planning for people getting out of prison, and more and more. Another issue that I've been really frustrated by is the sanitation crisis in New York City. And as a New Yorker, it really upsets me. And it's something that I hear about more than any other issue from our constituents. And that's the overflowing trash cans, the mountains of trash, the trash explosions. And to me, it's more than an aesthetic issue. New York City is not going to bounce back if we have filth on the streets, and because people are in decision-making mode right now. Are we going to stay? Are we going to go? Should we come to New York? Should we not come to New York? The budget was cut by de Blasio when COVID hit, from like, we had 750 truck routes emptying corner baskets down to around 200 truck routes. It was restored last year to 400 truck routes. I'm calling for a restoration to pre-pandemic levels. In the mayor's budget, he's proposing to further cut sanitation. That's not okay with me. He's also proposing to suspend further expansion of the composting in New York City. So I understand the need to be fiscally responsible, but I think I think it's very unwise to stop the, number one, to stop picking up the trash. And number two, to stop following ecological innovating and stop sending so much trash to landfill. The amount of CO2 emissions that are organic waste, the rat problem in the neighborhoods largely stems from people putting their food waste on the sidewalk on trash collection day. What do you think is going to happen when you put food waste on the sidewalk at 9 o'clock at night, or by the way, at 6 o'clock in the evening for pickup early the next morning? That's a buffet. So this is important stuff that you don't hear talked about. People are frustrated that the city's not doing anything about it. They're also frustrated that people aren't, that their leaders aren't talking about it. I really liked a lot of what I heard today. I agree with Joanne says I need to be more visible in Chelsea. I'll come see you, Joanne, in Chelsea. I sent out this newsletter. People are like, don't you sleep? I guess I'm not doing enough, Joanne. I'll make you proud though, Joanne, I promise. I appreciate.
I have 2 things about your garbage.
Yes.
Our garbage. One is, sometimes I do this, and that is I take leftovers that I'm ready to throw out that I can't get rid of immediately, and I put them in the freezer. So when they go out, they're frozen. The second thing is I raised this a long time ago, and that is, I think it's in Thailand that they manufacture plastic bags which fall apart after a few months. And I don't know who I suggested it to, but I would suggest that that's something that you could look into, because guess what? Maybe you're not supposed to have plastic bags, but I got Chinese dinner tonight, and guess what it came in? Plastic bags. So I throw this out that there is people want plastic bags, that there is another rendition of plastic bags somewhere in this world that we could look into.
Great idea. Biodegradable plastic bags. I'm so thrilled by the plastic bag ban. I don't know about you, but I used to have this like massive growing ball of plastic bags, and I'll bring my webcam over there. I've got like one left. For the first time ever, I don't have a massive pile of plastic bags because I've been using reusable bags and paper bags, and those are bags that we're not going to see in the trees. It's bags we're not going to see in the ocean and in the streams. So that's an example to me of what can happen when we follow common sense, follow the example of other places around the world. By the way, single-use plastics is a huge problem and something I want to pursue on the city council, because we're way behind other municipalities around the world with single-use plastics. Do you know in Canada, they're phasing out almost all non-essential single-use plastics. In the state of California, many places around the world. We've got to do it. I did a post about bottled water that turned out to be like the most controversial post I've ever done. I was at Costco and I took a picture with a big pile of bottled water and said, we have the best tap water in the world. Don't buy bottled water for home consumption. Use filtered water. Anyway, apparently, you know, I had the Trump people came after me. You know, a lot of people, New Yorkers came after me because they like their Poland Spring, but we have to think about the costs of filter your water at home. Think about the cost of buying pallets of bottled water for home consumption. Seemingly small issues, but the planet is suffering, and we have to think about our own role in contributing to this problem, and little things like bottled water. They're actually very important. I liked what I've heard tonight about the Penn Station project. I agree with Senator Hoylman that the numbers, there's a lot of questions about the numbers. I think that it would be a huge mistake to not build huge numbers of affordable housing. And I look at the council district I represent, and I'm so anxious to create large numbers of affordable housing. There's not a lot of places to do it. Why are we building 18 million square feet of office space? 450 affordable units? I think it's a big missed opportunity. And also the station, you know, you look at the renderings of the station that they're proposing, they're not attached to anything. You know, they're just kind of, you know, made up because there's no station plan. But that's not the station I want. That's not the Penn Station I want. I think they should move Madison Square Garden. I think we could get a real world-class train station if they move Madison Square Garden to where. I don't have the answer to that, but I don't think that a true effort's ever been made. So I'm working with, you know, I'm the new kid on the block. The elected officials have been meeting about this and talking about this. We're going to be meeting very soon. And, you know, I just think it would be, you know, we can't afford to blow this. I think it's possible to get a new Penn Station that meets the majesty of the city. It might not meet the majesty of the original Penn Station. The only way to really do that would be to rebuild the original Penn Station. By the way, maybe we can. We shouldn't think small. That's what I'm saying. I've talked for too long and I apologize, but it's just so good to see everyone. And by the way, this is a great turnout at CRDC. This is a great night for CRDC. Congrats to everyone at CRDC for this great turnout, and congrats to our community for having such great candidates.
Well, thank you, Eric. So good to hear from you. It's after 9 o'clock. I think you could take off the tie, hopefully. It's been a long day, I imagine. I believe we have heard from everyone. So thank you. Thank everyone so much for joining. I do want to share. I heard from someone there, but I do want to share that on next Tuesday, we have a wonderful forum coming up that has been hosted, is going to be hosted and has been set up lovingly by our Executive Vice President, Luana Green. This is going to be, we invite you to join us for an evening celebrating Black History Month, an evening of excellence featuring notable African Americans sharing their experiences and challenges in the pursuit of excellence in their fields of expertise. Luana has set up a great evening. It's highlighted by a lot of wonderful speakers. My opinion, the highlight, at least in my opinion, is the Majority Leader, Andrea Stewart Cousins, will be joining us, which is a great person for us to have and hear from. And honestly, very excited for Luana. You've set up a great event. So we've got some great speakers to hear from. You'll see more about it in our emails, but it is this upcoming Tuesday from 7 to 9. And last but not least, don't forget to vote. The vote for the original poll that was sent out will be closing at 10 o'clock. If you have questions, please contact Luana or myself.
Joe, before we close,
we'll
could I ask a question? Can I ask a question before we close?
Sure, Roberta. What can I do for you?
I wanted to know about bullet petitions. I mean, we have several members who are running for assembly who are in our club. And I think it's going to be really destructive for the club if we people have been chatting offline about not wanting to carry the petition because their person isn't on it. And, we've had a history of really strong petitioning for the club. And I'm very concerned about what this will do to our club, to our ability to petition. I mean, I've spoken to a bunch of people who have said to me, well, if my person isn't on it, I mean, this is a history with this club. We've always gotten past that. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I have carried petitions with people on it who I absolutely despise, but it was for the club and I carried those petitions like a good soldier. And I think that this I just feel like this is going to be destructive for the club if people, say they're not going to carry it because their person isn't on it. So I'm very concerned about that.
It's a great question.
I agree.
It's a great question, Roberta. Here's what I'd say. I do want to talk more about it. I don't think the format with the 80 people that we have on, this meeting is about the endorsements and is really about hearing from the candidates. We actually set up a petitioning committee. So I would love to have you and Stuart and any other members who want to talk about it. We'll set up a petitioning committee meeting to determine how we want to approach petitioning. It's 9 o'clock. I don't think this is the forum for it, but I do think it's something that we've talked about. I've heard from a few members and I definitely want to talk about it.
So is this not a done deal? It's not a done deal. It was discussed at the exec and we have not done bullet petition. We did not settle on doing bullet petitioning. I can tell you that much. However, it was also something that wasn't really voted on. So I think it's something that we should discuss more. And I'm happy to do it. So I think, well, maybe we should, now that we have everybody here, since they're voting, maybe it's something they could vote on.
Sorry, Joe, if I may interrupt, Roberta, thank you for
Please
your
go on.
suggestion. I don't want to interrupt Joe, but we are here for the candidates that are running for office and to hear the incumbents. That's specifically what this meeting is about. We're going to have the petitioning meeting later on to discuss the petitioning, okay? So this is not the forum at this time. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Luana. And thank you for the good question. I'll close with this. Please don't forget to vote. The poll is open until 10 p.m. Again, Luana and I can help. If you should double check, you also got a second email specifically for Democratic State Committee for the female candidate. So please be sure to vote on both of those polls. So thank you everyone for joining us. And thank you, a special thank you, obviously, to both our candidates.
Heads up,
who
the
did a
second
wonderful
email
job.
arrived at 8:48, so people know that it arrived at 8:48, so people looking at an email for that time.
Great to know. David could add 8:48. That's the second email from Opa Vote. I hope everyone has a great night. Again, thank you to our candidates, and also thank you to everyone for attending and for the great questions that were put in the chat. This was really informative. So have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.